The source material you all shared for this is titled Mind Not Be Affected by Conditions.
And that title really gets right to the heart of it.
It does. It's all about finding that inner stability, even when life throws curveballs, and it always does.
Oh yeah, it does, always does. And this deep dive is all about exploring Master Lu's wisdom and how his teachings can offer really practical guidance for navigating those ups and downs.
Ups and downs, we all have them.
Yeah.
And maybe even help us find a little more peace in the process.
A little more peace wouldn't hurt.
And not at all. Now, the source starts off with this observation about success, and it really got me thinking. It says, I'm quoting here, remember, it is your conditions, not your ability, that determines whether you can succeed perfectly in your endeavors. No matter how much effort you put in or how able you are, you may still fail. This is because blessings in the human realm are formed through a combination of causes and conditions.
Powerful stuff right off the bat.
I know. I mean, what's your take on that? I feel like we often put so much emphasis on our individual effort, but this is suggesting something else is at play here too.
It is. It's saying success isn't solely a product of our talent or how hard we work, but that the environment, the circumstances we're in, play a huge role.
It's like even with the best skills and the most dedication, sometimes things just don't align.
Exactly. Imagine launching a fantastic product, but right as a recession hits.
Oh man, bad timing.
Right. Your ability and effort might be there, but those external conditions, the economy in this case, could still lead to failure.
So it's not always a personal failing if things don't work out.
Exactly. And this teaching encourages us to look beyond ourselves, consider those broader forces at play, rather than just focusing on our own perceived shortcomings when things don't go as planned.
It's a much bigger picture than we often consider.
It is. And that brings us to another core Buddhist concept that Master Lu emphasizes: impermanence.
Oh yeah, that idea that nothing lasts forever, which can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
It can. It can. But understanding this idea of impermanence is actually a key step in this whole process of cultivating a mind that isn't constantly reacting to everything.
Okay, so how does that work? Because I think a lot of us cling to things wanting them to stay the same even though we know deep down they won't.
Right. Well, the source puts it this way. We must think constantly about impermanence. Another way of saying that is that we must remind ourselves constantly that nothing in this world lasts forever, and the fact they are not long-lasting means that they are not real.
Now, when it says not real, I mean, things obviously exist, we experience them. So what does that actually mean?
Good question. It's not saying that things don't exist in our day-to-day lives, but rather that they don't have a fixed, unchanging essence. They're always in flux, changing, transforming.
Kind of like a river always flowing.
Precisely. Think about it. Our bodies change, our relationships evolve, even our tastes and preferences shift over time.
Like that song you used to love in high school that now you just cringe at.
Exactly. And because things are constantly changing, clinging tightly to them as if they were permanent sources of happiness or security, well, that just sets us up for disappointment and suffering.
Because eventually they'll change or they'll end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by acknowledging this inherent impermanence, by reminding ourselves that this too shall pass, we can start to loosen our grip a bit.
Detach a little.
Yes. And this can be a powerful tool when it comes to dealing with loss or difficult transitions. Because we've already acknowledged that change is inevitable, it might still be sad or challenging, but it won't completely derail us.
It's almost like we're mentally prepared.
In a way, yes. It's a shift from being surprised and devastated by change to accepting it as a natural part of life.
And that acceptance can bring a sense of peace even amidst the ups and downs.
It can. Now, the source also delves into the idea of faith and the possibility of changing what's called predestined karma, which might sound a bit mysterious.
Yeah, predestined karma. What is that exactly?
Well, in this teaching, it refers to the potential outcomes in our lives that are influenced by our past actions.
Okay, so like the consequences of things we've done before.
Right. Kind of like seeds we've planted that might bear fruit later on. But it's not presented as a fixed, unchangeable destiny.
So there's room for change.
Exactly. And that's where faith comes in. The source states, when disaster strikes, we must not panic. We must have faith. Even if it is a predestined karma, it can still be changed.
So even if we've made mistakes in the past, there's still hope for a better future.
That's the message. And it goes on to outline specific actions we can take to transform this negative karma. Things like performing good deeds, making heartfelt commitments, practicing generosity, and diligently reciting Buddhist scriptures.
So it's about taking responsibility for our actions and making a conscious effort to change our course.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the power of our present actions, our intentions to shape our future, rather than just passively accepting whatever comes our way.
I love that. It's empowering.
It is. It's about recognizing our agency, our ability to make choices that can create a more positive outcome.
And it really puts the focus on our own efforts rather than
Awesome.
relying on outside forces like fortune tellers or divine intervention.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our path.
Now let's take a short break. We'll return refreshed in just a moment.
Now, building on this idea of taking action, the source then introduces a core principle for navigating any challenge, cultivating an unmoved mind.
Ah, the unmoved mind, the essence of resilience.
Yeah, the source says, moreover, the mind must strictly remain unmoved. For example, when a person claims that their mind is unmoved, meaning that they are unmoved by the sight of money, deep down they may think otherwise.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Right. It's not just about saying you're unfazed by things, but actually feeling that inner stillness even when temptations or difficulties arise.
And the source then poses some pretty pointed questions for us to consider.
Hitting us where it hurts.
A little bit. It asks, how many people do you think can really resist the temptation of money? While walking on the street, would you pick up a banknote that lands at your feet? Are you able to resist the temptation of profitable opportunities?
Wow, those are tough questions.
They are. They challenge us to be honest with ourselves about our attachments and how easily our minds get pulled in different directions.
I know, I'm definitely guilty of getting swayed by a good deal.
We all are, to some extent. But the key takeaway here is that allowing our minds to be constantly moved by these external things comes with consequences.
Karmic consequences, the source says.
Right. And in this context, a moved mind often refers to one that's agitated by desires, aversions, fears, all those strong emotions that can cloud our judgment and lead to unwise actions.
So it's about finding that inner balance, that stability, so we're not constantly reacting to every little thing.
Exactly. And the text highlights the profound benefits of this unmoved mind. It's linked to becoming a more virtuous person, progressing on a spiritual path, and even achieving a state of signlessness and effortlessness, which sounds pretty amazing.
It does almost like a state of complete inner peace.
That's the idea, a state of deep equanimity, where the mind is no longer disturbed by the constant flow of thoughts and external stimuli.
I think that's something we can all aspire to.
Definitely. And the good news is that it's a journey we can all embark on. It doesn't happen overnight, but through consistent practice, we can make progress.
Speaking of practice, the source then offers some encouragement by reminding us that originally Buddha was also just an ordinary person who had crossed over to sagehood in gradual steps.
Meaning we all have that potential within us.
Exactly. We might not be enlightened beings yet, but we can cultivate those qualities within ourselves step by step.
And it specifically addresses negative tendencies like greed, suggesting that generosity is a powerful antidote.
So instead of getting caught up in wanting more, we can focus on giving.
Right. And that shift in perspective can have a ripple effect on our entire outlook.
It's like we're actively choosing to focus on abundance rather than scarcity.
Exactly. Now, of course, the million-dollar question is, how do we actually cultivate this unmoved mind? How do we deal with those external conditions and the ever-present distracting thoughts?
Because let's be real, life is full of distractions.
It is, and the source directly addresses this. It asks, no matter how much circumstances change, our minds must not change. Whenever something bad happens or when external conditions become undesirable, how do we rid ourselves of distracting thoughts and prevent our minds from being affected?
Good question. And thankfully, it offers 3 specific methods to try.
Methods we can put into practice right now.
The first one is observe with wisdom, which sounds pretty straightforward.
It is. It's about applying our understanding of impermanence to the situation at hand.
So instead of immediately reacting emotionally, we take a step back and analyze things with a clear mind.
Exactly. The source explains that when wisdom is used when analyzing a problem, you will gain wisdom in turn.
So by observing the situation with that awareness that this too shall pass, we could detach a bit from the emotional intensity of it.
Right. And this can help us make wiser choices, respond more skillfully, rather than just reacting impulsively.
Got it. The second method is a bit more intense. observe the suffering in hell.
Yeah, that one might raise some eyebrows.
It did for me, but the underlying principle is about understanding the consequences of our actions.
Exactly. It's not about literally going to hell, but about contemplating the potential negative outcomes of harmful actions as a way to motivate ourselves to choose a different path.
So if you're feeling tempted to do something, isn't right, you pause and really consider the potential harm it could cause.
Right. The source says, whenever you're about to commit a bad deed, think about the karmic consequence of descending into hell. Thus, you'll learn to restrain yourself.
It's a powerful way to cultivate self-restraint.
It is, and it highlights the interconnectedness of our actions, how what we do affects not just ourselves, but others as well.
The third method shifts the focus to a more active spiritual practice. Recite mantra and repent.
Yes, this involves chanting specific phrases or scriptures and sincerely acknowledging any past wrongdoings.
It's about clearing the mental clutter and those negative karmic influences through focused repetition and genuine remorse.
Exactly. The source explains, when we are preoccupied with distracting thoughts and we feel perturbed, we should concentrate on reciting Buddhist scriptures whilst repenting earnestly. This way, our afflictions will naturally be gone.
But it emphasizes that this recitation needs to be done with sincerity and focus.
Absolutely. It's not just about going through the motions, but about putting your heart into it.
And it also mentions that what we consume can affect the effectiveness of these recitations, specifically advising against non-vegetarian food or the 5 pungent spices, onion, garlic, leeks, scallion, and asafoetida.
Interesting. I've never heard of asafoetida.
Me neither. But apparently these foods are seen as containing stimulants that can make it harder to achieve that calm and focused state of mind needed for spiritual practice.
So it's about creating the right internal environment for these practices to be most effective.
Makes sense.
Let's pause for a short break before we recap today's key messages.
We just wanted to take a quick moment to remind you all that The Deep Dive is a nonprofit endeavor fueled by our love of learning and sharing knowledge with all of you.
So let's take a step back and recap some of the key takeaways from Master Lu's teachings that we've explored today.
We covered a lot of ground. We started with that idea that external conditions play a huge role in our success or failure in any endeavor.
We then dove into the concept of impermanence and how recognizing it can help us loosen our grip on things and reduce suffering.
We talked about the possibility of transforming negative karma through positive actions and the importance of cultivating an unmoved mind.
And finally, we explored some practical methods for dealing with external distractions and those pesky thoughts that can throw us off balance.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you some new tools and perspectives to navigate the ups and downs of life with a little more grace and inner peace.
We hope so. And to leave you with the final thought, to ponder, consider this. If cultivating an unmoved mind is the goal, how might paying attention to your reactions to everyday annoyances, those little frustrations we all experience like traffic jams or slow internet, how might that be a really accessible starting point for practicing this kind of inner stability?
It's about noticing those habitual reactions and starting to shift them.
Exactly.
Because it's in those everyday moments that we can really start to practice this way of being.
For more on this topic and to explore further, you can find links and resources in the show notes. And as always, we love hearing from you.
So if you have any questions or if there are any specific topics or sources you'd like us to deep dive into in the future, please send us an email.
We appreciate you joining us on this journey of discovery, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.